So get involved in your city and town like I did. So attend meetings in your town, school board meetings, any of the legislative meetings in your town, attend those. Learn who represents you in your town, in your state, nationally. Attend legislative meetings if you can. I would say get involved in your state organization, whether it's your nurses association or whatever field you're in. Read the op-eds in your local paper. Write op-eds in your local paper. I think often the noisiest voices in those op-eds tend to dominate the conversation, and put your thoughts out there.
Clock in, scrub up, and join us behind the red line. You're listening to First Case, a perioperative podcast bringing you exciting interviews, engaging discussions, and innovative solutions that are changing the way patients receive surgical care. Each episode, we talk to frontline staff, perioperative leadership, and nursing entrepreneurs from across the country as they share their stories, experience, and expertise on the industry we love. From the back table to the boardroom, from wheels in to wheels out, we tackle the real-life issues affecting the OR. Whether you're tuning in for surgical service education or inspiration, we're glad you're here. And now, it's time to roll back and start the first case.
On this week's episode of First Case, we're speaking with Megan Nolan, Director of Nursing and Patient Care Operations at Boston Children's Hospital. And today we're going to take a different approach to discussing advocacy and look at what it looks like to be involved as an advocate in your local government and also in your state professional organizations. Megan's story of involvement really started with a personal realization and a commitment to bring about change. You're going to hear all about it on this week's episode, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with Megan Nolan.
Hi, I'm Chris Blevins.
And I'm Melanie Perry.
From the studios of Healthcare HQ, you're listening to First Case.
Joining us now is Megan Nolan, Director of Nursing and Patient Care Operations at Boston Children's Hospital. And Megan, today we're going to kind of have a new conversation about advocacy and would look at the ways that we can get involved with our local government or with our nursing associations or professional organizations. And this is going to be just another way we can talk about advocacy. And I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to talk about advocacy. I'm so passionate about all kinds of advocacy.
That is absolutely true. I see you on LinkedIn. I see you on Facebook, and you are absolutely passionate. And you are one of the names that came to the top of the list when we were looking at who we could interview for this season. So before we dive into all of that, why don't you just introduce yourself and tell our audience a little bit about who you are?
Hi, I'm Megan. I've been a nurse for 17 years. In the operating room that entire time. I'm originally from Minnesota, but I live in Massachusetts for, since 2006. So it's been a long time. So I consider myself a Bostonian. I have 2 kids, 7 and 12, and they're part of my advocacy journey as well. I always make sure to bring them along, teach them all I know. And I love being in the operating room, but I'm also really excited about kind of this little venture that I've taken into the political realm.
Okay, so before we get into your story, actually, I want to ask about the operating room. You've been in the operating room for your entire career. If you had to pick, what would you say your favorite specialty in the OR is?
I was in cardiac operating room for 10 years in the peds cardiac operating room. It's my, love.
Yeah.
But I had to kind of leave that behind as I transitioned into leadership. So now I'm focusing a little bit away from the care of the cardiac patient and really focusing on the care of my team and leading them where they need to go next.
Yeah. But I love that. I love that you are looking at it as care of your team, because in turn, your team is then caring for your patients. So it's all connected. And I'm just honestly just randomly curious because I didn't know that about you. I was curious what specialty was your favorite when you were practicing in the clinical area. But now to move on to really talk about your story and to find out about your involvement. When you and I talked prior to this interview, you kind of talked about what spurred you on or the decision that you made to get involved. Can you kind of tell us that story?
Yeah. So taking a step back kind of in my career, moving from being a clinical coordinator to the director role, I felt that I needed additional skills. And so I hired a coach. And my coach, Peter, helped me really align my personal goals. And to do that, he really spent a long time trying to bring out my core values. And so one of my core values is advocacy. And that shows up in a lot of different ways for me.
So how did Peter help you really discover that advocacy was one of your big core values?
I think it's a magical thing about coaching. I actually don't really know how he did it, but we spent a long time kind of trying to figure out things in my background. And the advocacy piece just kept coming up in the way I kind of approach different challenges or working with my team or working with my kids or, anything that I do. He really was like, that really sounds like advocacy. And I was like, yes, of course, that is exactly the thing that I've been doing. It shows up in my leadership style. It shows up in how I work with my kids. It shows up in working with my family and then also working for our patients and really working in our community. So it's showing up in a lot of different ways.
So after you identified that, what did you do?
So I think the great part about having these core values is now that they've become solid for me, I make sure that I'm intentional and about how I make my decisions and how I use them. So for advocacy, for me, in the pandemic, a lot of things were really distressful for all of us. And a lot of things were coming to light politically and in my town. And it really led me to think, what can I do to help?
Well, and that's kind of where a lot of people start because they have this idea that they see a problem, they know it needs to be fixed. And it's like this burning, well, if I don't do it, who's going to? And it motivates you to step forward, even if it's a little scary, because you see that something needs to be changed. And I think that's the story we've heard through a lot of the different people that we've interviewed this season. And I think that is also something that drove you to have a candidacy for a town meeting, right? In your town? I want our audience to hear that story because I thought that it was fascinating.
Yes, thank you. One of my favorite quotes is from Margaret Mead. It says, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." And I really firmly believe that a small group of people in your town, in your hospitals, wherever you are, really can make a difference. And so I was inspired. My neighbor across the street became involved in town meeting, and she kind of took my hand and brought me along, and I got involved in my local women's group in my town. She was a town meeting member, and working with the local women's group was so inspiring, and it was a lot of great people who were just really passionate about making our town a better place and working with our community and make sure other people's voices were heard. And it made it really approachable for me to say, yes, I can definitely do this and I can really get involved. These people have done it. You've seen their path, and I can get involved as well.
So you say town meeting, and I know that everybody does not have that form of government in their town or in their city. So can you explain exactly what town meeting is, just in case anybody's confused?
Absolutely. It's really funny. It's a kind of a New England thing. So in New England, all the towns are towns. And so they have this really old approach to leadership. So there's like a select board, and then there's a warrant committee, and then there's the town meeting. And so town meeting in my town is a group of 350 people from different precincts in our town that are elected officials that are able to make decisions for the direction of our town. So they vote on different things.
I think the connection that a lot of us might make maybe would be like city council or local government or something kind of similar, right? Yeah, that's kind of where my brain was going. But I like the name town meeting. It sounds so fun.
Yeah, it's very quaint.
Yeah, it is. But how fitting that it would be in New England, right? I love it. So one thing that you just said, though, you talked about getting involved with a women's group and getting to know people and making those connections. And it really speaks to the importance and the fundamental necessity of having a network, of having people that you can have in your corner who can both teach you, guide you, but support you as well when you move forward, wouldn't you say?
Yes. It's really important. One of the things that we, as part of this local women's group, is we came together as candidates. So really all of the candidates with similar kind of motivations for becoming in town meeting got together, and then we supported each other. So we could all campaign together. But instead of like 30 folks out all campaigning separately, we all kind of pooled our resources together. So that was really, really great. And as part of my campaign experience, I learned from these women about how you go about campaigning.
Okay, so you brought up your kids already, and I know that your kids were involved in your campaign experience, but just tell us the story as a whole about how you campaigned, how you included your children, and what that experience was like for you.
Absolutely. So the first thing I had to do was go pull my papers at the town hall. So I had to make sure that I get there before the town hall closes. So that was, it's open 9 to 5. So I went down to the town hall, pulled my papers, and then I signed up for a candidate. It was so great. Our town clerk is amazing. And once I'd filled out my papers, she's like, "Congratulations, you're a candidate." And that was like really exciting because she was so excited for me.
Yeah, definitely.
So I had to go door knocking to get signatures. I took my kids with me and my 2 dogs, and we went all through my neighborhood and neighborhoods adjacent to me and asked people to sign and say, "Will you support me as a candidate?" And so that was really fun and a great way to meet new people that I hadn't met before.
So going door to door seems like it might make people a little nervous these days. Maybe not exactly what comes to mind when you think about campaigning, but how did that help? How did that help in the process? I can imagine getting to know the people in your neighborhood and actually putting names with faces was something that was very beneficial. What did your kids do while you were going knocking on doors? How did they help?
So I brought my kids door to door. Each of them had a job. So one held the papers, one held the pen. And so when I got to do the talking, so when I was door knocking, that was the piece that I think was intimidating to me most. I'm a very introverted person. And so I was a little bit hesitant to want to do that, but I knew that this was the piece that I needed to do. It's like the next hurdle that you need to do to become a candidate. And so once I was all done with that, then I was like, yes, I did it. So it was really like inspiring, and I really felt great about it.
Yeah, that sense of accomplishment for sure. I know I can kind of relate because in the state of Alabama, we don't have surgical smoke evacuation legislation yet. And so I've kind of picked up that mantle of working towards that. But it's that same initial trepidation and fear of like, how do I get started? What do I do? And I have done the same, falling on the shoulders, I guess, of the other people who have done it and trying to surround myself with people who are experienced, who do know what it's like. And then overcoming those fears. For you, it was knocking on doors. For me, it was emailing our senator. I was like, oh, I don't know if I can do that. But still, we get over it and then it's accomplished. And it's like, oh, I did that thing. And it's amazing how empowering it is when we overcome something that is maybe stressful or causing a lot of fear for us. And then we do it. We're like, oh, I can do this. And I really can achieve this goal. I can do it. And I think that's really cool. So I absolutely love the lessons that we can take from your campaign experience and your involvement in town meeting and your involvement politically, because it goes to show, first of all, that as nurses, we should be involved locally as well. We should be involved. I mean, because we aren't just nurses at the hospital. We are in our communities and we are involved and we have families and we have other things. And so being able to be involved politically is very important. But you can also be involved with your state nurses association as well, or your professional organization. If you're not a nurse, there are multiple organizations out there. So tell me a little bit about your involvement with your state nurses association.
So I've only recently become involved with my state nurses association. It's been part of this kind of journey that I've had. And so we've had a few really great events since I've become involved with ANA of Massachusetts. We had a legislation day where we got to hang out at the State House, and the ANA Massachusetts really did all of the legwork to set up meetings for us with our state legislators on a multitude of bills. So there's things that ANA Massachusetts is advocating for, so workplace violence and bullying, nurse licensure compact, and smoke evacuation. So there's a few things that we're supporting at our local level. And they did all the work. So they set up all the meetings. And I think that took away some of that fear that I was having as well, because it is intimidating to, like, you know, you put your suit on and you're a nurse and you go to the state house.
Right.
And it's intimidating.
Yeah, so, well, we don't get that. We don't get that political experience in school. You know, it's like, what do I do now? So absolutely very, uncharted waters for us, right?
Yeah, so I had meeting time. So at 1:30, I was supposed to meet with this state representative. And so I went to their office, and then we would just talk about the things that ANA Massachusetts is advocating for. And it was really easy and actually really, really fun. And I'm so thrilled that I was able to do that. I highly recommend getting involved with your state nurses association. It really is very like entry level. You don't have to have experience. They'll hold your hand through the whole thing. And it was really, really easy. So I highly recommend.
Was there a process that you had to go through so that you could become involved with your nurses association? Or was it just because you're a nurse in the state, you're already a member?
I am a member of ANA Massachusetts. So I had to become a member, but then I joined the policy committee on ANA Massachusetts. So I'm working on that as well.
Awesome. So obviously, smoke evacuation is kind of at the forefront of all of the advocacy conversations that we have just because it is so prevalent right now. And I'm curious what the status is of smoke evacuation legislation in Massachusetts. I know that I've seen a lot of things coming out of your state. Can you give us an update?
Yes. So for smoke evacuation in Massachusetts, we have testified at the healthcare committee level. The bill is still in committee. We have also met with state legislators advocating for the bill. So a lot of people, we're getting a lot of great feedback from the legislators that it seems very common sense. Like they had no idea we were being exposed to surgical smoke in the operating room, and they're a little bit horrified. And so we've gotten a lot of co-signatures on the bill. So we hope that it comes out of committee, or we're just waiting to see what happens next.
Well, awesome. Well, I know that this episode is going to air in early 2024. So I hope that when it airs, we can have an update that says, yay, it's passed. But we will keep our fingers crossed and see. But that is very positive information and a positive update for where you are in the state of Massachusetts. And like I said, I mentioned Alabama already, and we're at the beginning of that cycle. So we are going to be working as well towards that. But I want to talk now about somebody else, the other people listening. If they want to get involved, no matter if they're a nurse, surgical tech, radiology tech, or anybody at all who is listening, if they want to get involved, what do they need to do? What do they need to know?
Getting involved is easier than you think it is. So I would say just dip your toe in the pool. The water feels nice. Then put your whole body in. Get involved.
And just jump in and do it, right?
And just jump in and do it, right? You got to start somewhere. Yeah. So get involved in your city and town like I did. So attend meetings in your town, school board meetings, any of the legislative meetings in your town. Attend those. Learn who represents you in your town, in your state, nationally. Attend legislative meetings if you can. I would say get involved in your state organization, whether it's your nurses association or whatever field you're in. Read the op-eds in your local paper. Write op-eds in your local paper. I think often the noisiest voices in those op-eds tend to dominate the conversation, and put your thoughts out there. Support local candidates. So know who's running for your next election. Get out there, do some door knocking and sign holding. I've committed because I know door knocking is scary for me. I'm going to door knock this year for my support my local candidate. That happens in about the spring of this year for my town. And there's also organizations specifically designed by nurses for nurses to get you involved in politics, like Healing Politics is a great organization. So there's a lot of information out there. Google it, ask your friends. You can call me. anything I can do to help.
Yeah, you can find Megan on LinkedIn. Definitely look her up and connect with her. That goes back, I think, to the importance of a network and the importance of connecting with like-minded people, and also people who will challenge you and challenge us to grow and see the world from bigger perspectives. So you mentioned just jumping in with both feet. Get your feet wet and then just dive in. And I think that also ties back into talking about really identifying advocacy as one of your core values. And you recognize that if somebody doesn't do something about this particular issue, then who's going to? So it may as well be me. And I think we can extrapolate and expand that to everyone else. All of us have things that we are passionate about, that we see that there's a problem and we want it to be better. But we can't sit around and wait for somebody else necessarily to fix it. So then it comes on us. I see a problem. I want it to be fixed. Well, then maybe I should be the voice that starts solving the problem and offering the solution. And that involvement with your organizations can help. One organization also that we haven't mentioned is AORN. AORN has tons of legislative assistance and information on their website if you are looking for that type of information. And you're also involved with AORN, is that right?
Yes, that's correct. I'm on the board of directors. I'm also running for secretary so that I can continue to be involved with AORN and helping push our legislative agenda forward.
That's exciting. I have recently gotten more aware of all the different ways that you can be involved with AORN and really recognize the benefits that AORN offers when it comes to awareness and recognition and just having those resources at your fingertips. So I think between AORN and our state nurses associations, we've the double whammy of powerful information right available to us. So I really think that there is a world of opportunity for anybody who wants to be involved, whether it's at a local level, at a state level, politically, even at your facility. All of this stuff still applies if you are wanting to make a change and see a difference made at your facility. You still have to be involved, be on those committees and join those groups that can make change. And I think that this really helps, your story really helps show how you can just jump in and be involved. Before we start wrapping things up though, do you have any final thoughts or just other advice that you want to share with anybody who just thinks they might want to be involved?
Yeah, I think start small, right? Pick your thing that you want to work on, right? And when you take something on, like I ran for town meeting, then I learned the skills to run a campaign. I learned the skills to network. I really didn't want to door knock, but I had to, and I got over it. And now I'm not scared of it anymore. So I think really just get involved, right? You start one step at a time, one little baby step, and then you learn a new skill. For me in my town, I was really worried about school overcrowding. And so, because my kids are school age and we're having a lot of challenges with overcrowding in school. And so that was the thing that I needed to change in my school district. So get involved. Pick the one thing. Don't make it too big. Don't get too overwhelming. Pick one thing that you want to work on and then seek the network. Ask your friends. A little Google search will get you pretty far. Yeah. And get involved. Get started one step at a time.
Yeah, just find your people. Yeah, find a problem, find your people, and just literally, like Nike says, right? Just do it and get out there and see what happens. All right, Megan, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to share your story with us, to tell us about how you chose to be involved and the ways that you were involved and how all of us can apply that same thing to the problems that we see that we want to change as well. Really appreciate you being on the show today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate all the great work that First Case is doing, sharing all of these great issues, and really looking forward to hearing more on this season.
And that was Megan Nolan, Director of Nursing and Patient Care Operations at Boston Children's Hospital. And I really just think one of the biggest takeaways we can have from Megan's interview is that we just need to get involved. We don't need to let fear stop us or a lack of knowledge stop us from trying to advocate or make a change. There are people that we can find to help us. Google will also help us, our professional organizations, lots of different ways that we can call on others to help. And then we can move on to make the changes that we see need to be made. But that is going to do it for today's episode. So on behalf of all of us here at First Case, thanks for listening to this week's podcast.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of First Case. As a reminder, you can help support us by subscribing to First Case on your favorite podcast app or by downloading the smartphone app on iPhone or Android. Simply search for First Case in the App Store or Google Play. The best thing about downloading the smartphone app is that you can access bonus content for certain episodes and view episodes in certain categories, like articles on the go and vendor spotlights. Are you following us on LinkedIn or Facebook yet? If you are and you love an episode or post, then let your social network know about it. Like, comment, or share our posts along with your thoughts and keep the conversation going. If you have any topics or guests that you would like to recommend for a future episode, just send us an email to info@firstcasemedia.com. We look forward to hearing from you.